On the old road where night refuses to arrive, a drum no one should hear beats for the dead to dance once more. In the forgotten heart of Minas Gerais, a road twists through shadows curling like cracked fingers, trying to drag the living into its silence. The asphalt, broken, swallowed by pulsing weeds, exhales a damp scent, the heavy breath of the forest pressing in from all sides. Eduardo, a photographer, had come to São Bartolomeu das Pedras, a town of houses muted by fear, chasing the promise of hidden stories. In the dark bar, an old man raised his glass of cachaca, eyes sunk deep, reflecting the trembling flame. On that curve, the drumming never stops. Listen, but don't look, not even for a second. The words lingered in the air. A cold shiver the night wind pressed into his skin. When the moon waned, Eduardo took the road. His flashlight barely cut into the darkness that seemed to breathe. Each step tightened his throat, the air growing thicker, heavier, like the silence itself was demanding passage. Then, a shallow drum beat echoed, a rhythm like the heartbeat of a hidden world, the wood vibrating between roots that pulsed in answer. The sound swelled, tangled with the scent of overturned soil and the dry scrape of bones, an aroma that clung to the skin. The forest opened, revealing a clearing where a circle of skeletons moved, bones snapping in an ancient choreography under a blue fire that burned more on the skin than it lit the ground. At the center, a skeletal king with a crown of rusted iron lifted a staff made of vertebrae, striking the earth as a sign of dominion. Each impact summoned more dead from the cold soil, the ground now throbbing beneath Eduardo's feet in time with the drum. Fear wrapped around him, sharp and uncertain, and when the camera clicked, an unnatural silence shattered the ritual. The heads turned at once, hollow eyes like frozen wells staring straight through him. The clatter of bones stopped, replaced by the wet sound of earth trembling and splitting open. Skeletal, freezing hands gripped Eduardo's legs, the chill of death crawling up his spine like a liquefied shadow. With a crack, the camera fell to the fractured asphalt, one last blurred record, showing dozens of grinning skulls calling someone to join the dance of the living. By morning, the road held only the camera, lying among weeds that were already rushing to reclaim it, and one impossible image, a new skeleton in the circle, breathing the cold, silent rain that fell, like a final, dark invitation. Would you dare follow the drum down the forgotten road? Listen to the echoes of the night, and share if fear has ever whispered your name. When Lucas witnesses a life-saving rescue on a rain-slicked street, he steps into a world where saving lives means watching suffering, and where the true horror is what hides behind polished smiles and sealed doors. The rain fell over Sao Paulo like liquid knives slicing the night air, each drop a sharp note in the symphony of a restless city. Traffic was at a deadlock, horns shattered the darkness, an impatient choir of metal and frustration that echoed off glass towers, turning the streets into a cage of sound and wet steel. Lucas pressed his forehead against the cold window of the city bus, his breath fogging the glass where streaks of water blurred the glowing red brake lights into bleeding embers. The air was damp, heavy with the scent of wet concrete and something more. The faint, metallic tang of electricity lingering after each thunderclap. Then, piercing this claustrophobic bubble of noise and rain, Lucas saw it. A man battling flames from within a burning car, his movements sharp and urgent, breaking through the smoke as if time itself was folding around him. The man was tall, thin, his soaked clothes clinging to lean limbs that moved with unsettling precision. The light of the blaze cast shifting shadows across his face, a mask carved from desperation and something colder, a gaze too intense, too fixed. He wasn't merely pulling the driver from death's grasp. He seemed to dissect it, study it as if it were a specimen laid bare. The asphalt steamed like a living thing, curling upward in waves around flickering flames that licked the night with hungry tongues. Later, Lucas would learn the name behind that figure. Fortunato Martins, a man whose polished exterior as a discreet businessman hid depths far darker than the city's relentless rainstorms. Owner of a high-end cosmetic clinic, Fortunato seemed at first a refuge, a sign that fortune might favor the bold, the new. When Lucas saw him on the news, calm and distanced in that sterile studio light, he could hardly imagine the shadows lurking behind the practiced smiles and muted tones. Invited to dinner in a sleek apartment smelling faintly of antiseptic and expensive wood polish, Lucas met Marina, Fortunato's wife. She was a ghost wrapped in human skin, her pallor almost translucent, her eyes pools of distance that swallowed the room's warmth. The smile she offered was polite, rehearsed, a mask perfected through repetition, hiding cracks Lucas would come to notice only too well. Between the courses, beneath the hum of the city filtered through thick windows, an undercurrent hummed, cold and waiting. The clinic, when Lucas first visited, was a monument to sterile care, but deeper in its bowels, in a windowless basement, shadows thickened like spilled ink. Fortunato's private office smelled of antiseptic mixed with something old, almost organic, an odor that settled stubbornly in the back of the throat. Expensive medical instruments gleamed under harsh white lights, but the room held more. Monitors flickered with grainy footage of patients convulsing in post-operative torment, their pain captured without mercy. Hidden cameras watched from corners where no visitor should tread. Jars, scalpels, and strange relic-like tools were arranged on a black altar that seemed to pulse with the clinic's dark heartbeat. Pain-tolerant study, Fortunato said softly, his voice a thread of calm in the storm. He spoke like a wildlife documentarian observing creatures in their natural suffering, each clip a glimpse into agony catalogued and dissected without a trace of empathy. Yet in his eyes, Lucas glimpsed something else. A quiet, devouring hunger, a pleasure cloaked beneath scientific curiosity that sent a chill deeper than the clinic's chill air conditioning. The hum of machines blended with the distant roll of thunder outside, the clinic itself morphing into a cage where pain was both subject and prisoner. When Marina fell gravely ill, swallowed by a severe infection that tightened the air with sterile urgency, Lucas stepped in to care for her. The hospital room was an icicle trapped in time. Fluorescent lights buzzed faintly overhead while cold seeped through the crumpled blankets and tiled walls. Fortunato's absence was noticeable. A vacuum filled instead by the unblinking eye of a hidden camera, its small red light a pulse in the otherwise silent shadows. The soft, stifled groans of Marina, each spasm recorded, immortalized, threaded through the air, stitching themselves into the unbearable stillness. The night Marina died, Lucas arrived before his shift. The door was ajar. A gap breathing, a whisper of night air tinged with antiseptic and decay. Inside, Fortunato sat beside the pale form, his fingers wrapped gently around cold flesh, a faint smile ghosting his lips. The camera's quiet vigil continued, the red dot shimmering like a sinister heartbeat. The room seemed to contract, walls narrowing, shadows folding inward, as if the very air mourned but also watched. Lucas left without a word, stepping back into the rain-soaked streets where the city's noise erupted like a shield against the suffocating quiet behind that door. But the silence followed him home, creeping into his thoughts, tightening its grip with every breath. In the dead depth of night, a file slid into his phone, a video, the image blurred, grainy but achingly intimate, himself asleep, the rise and fall of his chest, a soft rhythm in the dark. And from the corners of the recording, a whisper, cold, precise. "Now it's your turn, Doctor." Outside, the rain continued its relentless barrage, a relentless echo of scraping knives against the skin of the city, drowning the faint heartbeat of a nightmare only just beginning. Dive into the shadows where science meets obsession. Discover what lurks behind every polished smile, if you dare to watch. When silence becomes oppressive, and the house seems to breathe in sync with your fear, how far would you go to uncover the secrets hiding within the walls of a home that chose you? The night was still young, but it already carried a weight that settled on Lucas's back the moment he parked in front of the old house. A dark stain of shadow and ivy, unmoving beneath the faint flicker of the lone street lamp. Its colonial, imposing facade loomed over him, tall, narrow windows like watchful eyes, peering into the timid dusk to probe the soul of whoever dared to enter. The air was dense, damp, tinged with the smell of wet earth, tangled with an inexplicable hint of mold and ancient wood, a scent that clung to the skin like a subtle, persistent warning. Before he even stepped out of the car, Lucas felt the air turn colder, as though the house exhaled with a life of its own. He recalled the realtor's words, echoing like a distant warning. The house is beautiful, but no one can sleep there. Everyone moves out within weeks. He chuckled under his breath, the sound echoing strangely hollow in the deserted neighborhood. To Lucas, it was nothing but small-town superstition. Step by step on the cold cement, he passed through the squealing gate and approached the door, feeling the slick touch of ivy curling around the metal handle. The sudden drop in temperature hit him like a breath of icy air from an unseen presence, making him shiver and hunch his shoulders as if to ward off the growing discomfort. Inside, the house resisted the chaos outside. Order reigned, almost obsessively so. Polished floors reflecting the dim lamplight, spotless white walls, rustic furniture giving a welcoming yet overly quiet air, like a secret waiting to be kept. In the middle of it all, a wall clock stood out, a golden pendulum swinging at a hypnotically slow pace, its ticking far too loud, insistent, dominating the room. It was like the heart of the house, beating to keep everything vigilant and still. Lucas brewed a strong coffee, its bitter scent blending with the heavy air, and settled at the desk to review some writing. The lamp's faint light cast trembling shadows on the walls, shapes that almost seemed to take life between the concrete and the silence. At 3000 a.m., a sound, 2, 3, slow, heavy footsteps echoing from the floor above. A steady, deliberate beat, like a clock within the clock. Lucas froze, the air thick around him, almost tangible. He climbed the stairs, fingers brushing the cold, rough banister as a shiver raced down his spine. Every bedroom was empty, still, as though they had forgotten night even existed. When he returned to the living room, his eyes sought the clock. The pendulum had stopped at 3007, frozen. He tried to move the mechanism, but the chain holding it was rigid, as if some invisible weight dragged time backward, trapping it within the house, and inside him. The second night brought darkness earlier, and with it, the footsteps came sooner. At midnight, descending like a grim premonition, whispers bled into the air, low and indistinct, yet numerous, forming a ghostly orchestra that pulled fear and curiosity into an inseparable dance. Shadows danced on the walls, the temperature shifting, a sharp, cutting chill followed by suffocating warmth, as though the house sighed, aware and attentive. Lucas tried to ignore it, but his senses betrayed him. A faint scent of withered flowers drifted through, a sweet yet rotten note that stirred melancholy, and a fear almost childlike in its purity. By the third day, the outside world was slowly withdrawing. Neighbors avoided eye contact, their gazes darting away, as if even silence feared to touch that cursed place. An elderly woman approached him, her eyes carrying a silent urgency. "You need to leave, the house has already chosen you." The words fell like stones into a deep well, and the air seemed to swell with a heavier, darker shadow. That night, weary and afraid, Lucas chose to face the house. He turned off the lights and sat in the center of the living room, surrounded by a darkness that was no longer the absence of light, but a tangible force, almost suffocating. The clock's ticking ceased. The pendulum began to sway on its own at 3117, releasing a strange metallic vibrating sound, as if a taut string was being pulled to its breaking point. The footsteps returned from above, but now it was a relentless march, descending the stairs with a creak so deep it seemed to split time itself. In the half-light emerged a tall, thin figure, its face hidden beneath a black veil, a humanoid shadow that consumed light and the last fragments of hope. Behind it, a mass of shadows pressed together, the struggle for space turning the air dense, charged with invisible fingers that nearly brushed Lucas's skin, his body tingling as if touched by the texture of living night. He tried to move, but an unseen weight pinned him to the chair, his legs refusing to obey, as though the house itself sought to imprison his will. The clock stopped. The pendulum swung one last time, a slow, dragging movement that seemed to cry before dropping to the floor, its fall echoing like a granular warning against the absolute silence that followed. A voice whispered in his ear, low and icy, making the deepest fibers of Lucas's being throb. "Now, no one sleeps." By morning, the house exhaled a perverse stillness. The car sat unmoved in the driveway, cold and silent, but inside, there was no trace of Lucas. The clock, now alone on the wall, swayed its pendulum slowly, all on its own, in a macabre dance of waiting and promise, as if the house breathed, pulsed, and prepared to embrace the next soul, foolish enough to call it home. Step into the oppressive silence of the house where time stopped, and fear found a home. Are you ready to hear the footsteps that never end?